Good morning. So, what is the benefit of accepting ourselves and finding grace with ourselves on a daily basis? Today, we'll be focusing on releasing our inner critic. And that is really about finding a way of getting rid of the self-deprecation. We all have a voice inside of us that is unrelenting. It's the voice that says, you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you are unworthy, you will never make it, you are a failure. Unfortunately, these negative self-judgments are one of the reasons that keep us stuck. And they ultimately prevent us or keep us from moving forward. Into self-acceptance, into grace. The voice inside our heads has been referred to as many names. Some people refer to it as the ego, the super ego, the shadow, or most common, we call it the inner critic. The inner critic is the one that punishes you for not behaving, or the one that punishes you for not looking the way that you think that you should look, based on the rules that you have created for yourself. It's the voice that constantly reminds you of all of the negative things from the past. It drags you down from all the things that you could be. It compares you to others. It fills you with self-doubt, and ultimately it prevents you from living from a place of unconditional love. While the voice of the inner critic might be cruel, it has a purpose. And we're going to explore that today. We're going to explore how to move into grace. So take a deep breath as we dive into how the inner critic has been our protector. And find your comfortable space, your private space. Because your inner critic is here to keep you safe from failure. And it seeks to do so by discouraging you. While it might not be our most finest companion, its intentions are inherently good. So once you start to realize that your inner critic is really just looking out for you, you can start to engage in a different way with your inner critic. So how do we go about doing that? First of all, it can be helpful to create a little space between ourselves and our inner critic by giving this voice inside our head a name. One person said this about her inner critic: I have an inner critic. His name is Nigel. Nigel is in my imagination and is a gay inner critic, a painter. Nothing is ever good enough for Nigel. I think all of us have our Nigels, and some people come to eradicate the censor. The censor, unfortunately, never goes away. However, we can learn to work with them. I do love the notion of giving the inner critic a name and a voice. Although it might seem a little bit silly and unconventional, creating a persona is a really great way to neutralize its effect. When you name it, it loses its power. By creating a character, you will start to see and hear it differently. It will help you to see your critic's harsh words differently. And with more perspective, rather than automatically believing that whatever the inner critic says is the 100% truth. You might start to realize that you're being served self-deprecating thoughts. In fact, mindfulness shows that labeling this experience, such as here's Nigel again, telling me all sorts of stories, can actually help to settle your mind and make you feel more in charge. So today's meditation will provide you with the opportunity to befriend and name your inner critic. Now, I have named mine and taken mine by the hand, and mine is simply Little Karen. And it's the little version of me, and it's the inner child. However, you get to name yours whatever you want. So let's get started on this practice. So when you're ready, find a comfortable place to sit or lie down. And if you haven't already, close down your eyes and start to turn your awareness inward. And as you settle into stillness and listen into your inner world, see if you can become aware of your attitude towards yourself inside your head. Notice how your inner critic is speaking to yourself in this moment. Perhaps the voice is judging, criticizing, or wanting something to be different. And as you become aware of your inner critic, see if you can start to picture its persona. What does he or she look like? give your inner critic a name, an identity. Once you have a clear image of who this person is, see if you can graciously and warmly accept their presence. And all you have to do is allow them to be there. And as best you can, finding a little distance between yourself and this voice's opinions. You might like to thank your inner critic for wanting to look out for you. And let them know that you will always listen to their opinions and judgments. Time to slowly become more aware of the room, open your eyes, aware of where you are. Thank you for listening today. I hope that you have found some comfort in naming your inner critic and putting a little distance between the two of you, befriending that inner critic and recognizing that that inner critic is part of you. And by befriending the inner critic, you are now more aware of having grace with yourself. Because the inner critic, as you named, no longer runs the show. You do, my friend. you have a beautiful day. Namaste.